James, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Let's talk about 2013 St. Pete. Won the race. We were saying that St. Pete, 2015 is not going to be the same St. Pete from 2013. What are your expectations going into the start of the season?
Well, unfortunately, right now, expectations are kind of an unknown. We still have so much work to do even before we get to St. Pete, the new body kits, and we haven't had a chance to test them quite yet. And we'll get a bunch of days before we get there, which will make us that much more prepared and have a bit more of an understanding of what to expect from the car. Street tracks always change a little bit. They are usually affected more than other kind of circuits, which makes sense. But the layout and the general setup philosophy there should be the same. They're making some adjustments to curbs and walls here and there, so you have to kind of go and pick out some new visuals and make sure you don't aim for a wall that you think is here, but it's really actually a little bit closer, sort of thing. But I think, it's a natural thing. We do it every year, so I'm sure it'll be all right.
Going into your first race of the season, everyone's always nervous. I know as a driver, I was always nervous coming into my first race, not having done a lot of testing, which we've talked about. You don't get a lot of testing leading up to this. How do you actually deal with going into the event, not having a lot of practice? Yeah,
it's one of the toughest parts of being a racing driver is we really are so limited on actually getting to do our craft, and obviously the physical training plays a big part of that, and then looking over video and simulator work, whatever you can do to try and get that sort of as close to that experience of being in the car as you can. But when you go into the first race, it's very exciting. It's first time back in that competitive environment for a while, and I think I worked with a mental coach for a bunch of years to deal with a lot of different situations that come up in racing, and this being one of them. So it's just it's a matter of trying to treat it like any other race. You can't get too excited.
Talking about mental coach, I had one when I was racing. Now for you, how do they work with you? What does he do in terms of getting you prepared for the race?
It's really more general than that. We worked for a long time just on understanding some of the different emotions that happen in a race car, how to control them. Putting yourself in the right mindset to be successful, because it's such a mental game, as you know. It's like golf, or it's like tennis in that sense, where you have to be inch perfect lap after lap, just like you do shot after shot. And so working on that consistency, that frame of mind and state of mind was a big part of what we did.
What do you expect this year going into the 500?
Again, there's a lot to learn still because there'll be new body kits, but the team's actually been pretty competitive at Indy. Simon got inside the fast line in qualifying last year and raced pretty well, and hopefully my experience on the ovals, I can bring a little bit more to that program. The guys put a lot of time into prepping the car, which is what you need. I mean, that's the key at that race, and that's really where the speed comes from. So I've got a lot of faith that they know what they're doing. They know all the tips and tricks to make a nice, slick, fast race car, because ultimately, whatever you roll off the trailer with that first day of practice, you got a pretty good sense of where you're going to be in terms of outright pace, and it's hard to gain a lot of speed back. You can tune, but those big chunks of speed come from before you even get to the track.
Last season, 2014, you were fast. Actually, you're always fast at Indianapolis. In 2014, qualified on the front row. Take me through the race for you, like the ups and the downs. How did you handle the entire race, and how do you feel about it? How did it end?
The race for me was pretty solid. We, as everybody does at Indy, the race is so long, you're never going to have a flawless race, and we had a bunch of ups and downs throughout the race, but we had a massive tire vibration in one of the middle stints, which threw the car way out of balance. So when we stopped, we lost a bunch of time. When we stopped, we made an adjustment to the car to correct that balance, but the new tires fixed it, so the balance was wrong the other way. So we essentially lost 2 whole stints and lost a bunch of time, but got the car back right. Good pit stops, and we were right there in the top 4 on that restart that ultimately put us out of the race. But we got back into a position to win. So that's the kind of thing that you need to think about when you do Indy. Is you can have a bad stint, you can have 2 bad stints and still recover, because the race is so long. And as long as you got a good car and you're smart about it, you can work your way back to the front.
Now, the way that it ended, obviously, not the way you wanted it to go. Crashing out with Ed Carpenter. A lot of people just don't really know. They see a crash and they think, oh, it's just a crash, but that was actually a pretty heavy impact. How did you feel at that moment? Because you were very aggressive on that restart. What were you thinking at that time? Like, I can get Carpenter and Townsend Bell for the lead here?
The whole thing for me was, I wasn't going into that corner initially wanting to pass Ed. I was sat behind him on the restart. Townsend got a good run. Ed was pretty slow off the line. He didn't trim in the last pit stop, so he's carrying a bit more downforce, a bit more drag. So he wasn't particularly quick in a straight line. And I was content to kind of sit behind him, let him and Townsend race out, and try and actually get Townsend kind of out of one. But when Ed moved up to block Townsend and pushed him way up in the gray, I now all of a sudden was staring at this nice clean bit of racetrack and had a head of steam from Ed's draft and thought, if I back out now, Elio's going by, Marco's going by, all these guys are going by. And my car at that time in the race, we were really set up to be running with 2 or 3 guys. If I fell back to 5th, 6th, 7th, I didn't think I was going to be able to get back up to the front. And it's the Indy 500. So I just said, well, the opportunity's there. I know if I crack it now, I'm done. I'll get a top 5 at best. And I didn't care about finishing 5th.
Now, for the crash in itself, as a driver, as you experience it, it feels like, I always remember it felt like getting hit by like 12 linebackers. It hurt, man. It like hurt all the way to the bone. You've experienced having crashes. You had a big one at Pocono. We were speaking earlier about even suffering concussions. I've had one myself. Talk about the one concussion that you really did have that kind of, affected you for quite a while.
Yeah, it was I had a concussion at the Grand Prix of Indianapolis last year. It was very well publicized, and, I missed most of practice for the 500. But I had one in 2012, I'm pretty sure. It was a crash in Iowa, backed it into the walls, first time I'd ever gone in backwards on an oval, and that hurts more than anything. And I did the classic rookie mistake that everybody tells you not to do, which is don't lean forward. But when you're going backwards into a wall, your natural instinct is to just, crouch into a ball, and it creates that whiplash effect when you hit. So I had my bell rung pretty good. I tore the muscles in the front of my neck, and I ended up not really telling anybody about that and spending 2 days in my basement, with no lights on because I was in, a fair amount of pain. I was pretty concerned. I was about to take myself to hospital, but by day 3 it cleared up. So I figured I was probably all right. But it's no joke, and especially going through what I went through at Indy GP last year, I became a lot more educated on head injuries and how it really all works. And it's definitely something we got to take care of.
I always found that whenever I had a crash, I would always want to get back into the car immediately just to show that I still had that confidence to keep going. When people ask me sometimes, are you afraid of like dying or death? And I just always say to them like, no, I'm not really, because you believe in the car and you believe in the surroundings that you're in, that you are safe. That's kind of like my mindset with it going forward with it. What's yours?
Like you say, you never get into the car thinking, hey, I might die today. Obviously, it's always something that's possible. It's a dangerous sport inherently, and it always will be. It's come so far in terms of safety, but you're never going to be able to eliminate that risk. And that's just something that drivers accept blindly in a lot of cases. But it's a part of the sport. Some would argue it may be part of the appeal of the sport. I don't know. But yeah, when you have an accident, for me, it's always about understanding why the crash happened. And sometimes you know it before you're even done crashing. Sometimes it takes a little bit of analysis, maybe with something with the car, something with the track, whatever. As soon as I know what it was, whether it was my fault, whether it was something else, then it's no problem. You're back in the car and you're right back up to speed.
What happens if you get a win at the Indy 500? What does that do for you? Psychologically, but also for your career?
For your career, it's huge. Winning Indy is it's immortality, basically, in the racing world, because you're forever now introduced as Indy 500 winner so-and-so. Your face is permanently on the Borg Warner trophy. You go down in history, and that's the couple $1 million doesn't hurt either. But that's not, that's obviously not what it's about. It really is about the history of that place and what it means to everybody that's run there. And the tradition of the 500 and everything that goes into the whole month of May is so cool. So, that's career goal number 1, I think, for everybody. So to win that is a massive, massive check mark on the CV.
Now, would you put that ahead of winning a championship in IndyCar?
Man, I used to get asked that question a lot. My go-to answer, no hesitation, was championship. Because Indy 500, it's one race, one day. A million things could go wrong that work against you. But to be a champion, you've got to be good week in, week out, all different types of tracks. And that's still true, and I still believe that. And that's why I love IndyCar racing. But man, the 500 is pretty cool.
So on that note, what are your expectations for this season? Obviously, you want to win the championship. You always expect to win a championship coming into the season, but for you, it's a new team. Like, what are your expectations? Where are you setting your goals coming into the season?
For me, I always set goals as personal goals, not numerical goals, because, as I just said, there's so much that can influence a race that's outside of your control. If you're a tennis player, you're the influence. No one can beat you but you. But in racing, it's very different. And in that sense, I don't say I want to win X number of races. Everybody wants to win the championship. Like I said, everybody wants to win. That's why we're all there. That goes without saying. My goals are personal. I want to improve this. I want to be better at that. I want to, improve areas that I solely have, control over. And so there are a couple areas over last off season that I wanted to work on, and qualifying was one of them, and that was our strong suit last year. So there's a few other areas that I focused on this off season that I hope to see personal improvements on. And if I do all those things that I want to do well, I've got faith in the team to do a good job. The win should come naturally.
All right, new beer. Let's hear about it.
Hinchtown Hammerdown, Golden Ale. It's brewed in Indianapolis. It's a brewery there, Flat 12 Beer Works, that make it, and man, it's just something fun. But it's so cool having your name on a beer, and like having been part of the brewing process and picking what kind of beer it was and everything. And the big cool thing is that we're really trying to get it into Ontario in 2015, and we are this close to getting it done. So stay tuned.
You're gonna have to give the lads some when we're done here.
Yeah, no problem. We got plenty back there.
All right, thanks again, James.
Thank
I
you so
appreciate
much.
it. All right, good stuff, my man. We're done.
Cool.